Okay, this is chapter 3 of the ongoing series we have here. I have also changed the pen. It's now green. Isn't that exciting? Okay, chapter 3. Who's next then? Martin was calling as Horace, grinning broadly, stepped back into the line. Alice stepped forward gracefully, annoying Martin, who had wanted to nominate her as the next candidate. Alice warring, my lord, she said in her quiet, level voice. Then, before she could be asked, she continued, I request an appointment to the diplomatic service, please, my lord. Harold smiled at the solemn-looking girl. She had an air of self-confidence and poise about her that would suit her well in the service. He glanced at Lady Pauline. My lady, he said. She nodded her head several times. I've already spoken to Alice, my lord. I believe she will be an excellent candidate. Approved and accepted. Alice made a small bow of her head in the direction of the woman who would be her mentor. Will thought how alike they were, both tall and elegant in their movements, both grave in manner. He felt a small surge of pleasure for his oldest companion, knowing how much she had wanted the selection. Alice stepped back in line, and Martin, not to be forestalled this time, was already pointing to George. Right, you're next, addressed the Baron. George stepped forward, his mouth opened and closed several times, but nothing came out. The other wards watched in surprise. George, long regarded by them all as official advocate for just about everything, was overcome with stage fright. He finally managed to say something in a low voice that nobody in the room could hear. Baron Harold leaned forward, one hand cupped behind his ear. I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that, he said. George looked up at the Baron and with an enormous effort spoke in a just audible voice. George Carter, sir. Scribe school, sir. Martin, ever a stickler for the proprieties, drew breath to berate him for the truncated nature of his address. Before he could do so, and to everyone's evident relief, Baron Harold stepped in. Very well, Martin, let it go. Martin looked a little aggrieved, but subsided. The Baron glanced at Nigel, his chief scribe and legal officer. One eyebrow raised in question, sorry. Acceptable, my lord, he said, adding, I've seen some of George's work, and he really does have a gift for calligraphy. The Baron looked doubtful. He's not the most forceful of speakers, though, is he, scribe master? That could be a problem if he has to offer legal counsel at any time in the future. Nigel shrugged the objection aside. I promise you, my lord, with proper training, that sort of thing represents no problem. Absolutely no problem at all, my lord. The scribe master folded his hands together into the wide sleeves of the monk-like habit he wore as he warmed to his theme. I remember a boy who joined us some 7 years back, rather like this one here. As a matter of fact, he had that same habit of mumbling to his shoes, but we soon showed him how to overcome it. Some of our most reluctant speakers have gone on to develop absolute eloquence, my lord, absolute eloquence. The Baron drew breath to comment, but Nigel continued in his discourse. It may even surprise you to hear that as a boy, I myself suffered from a most terrible nervous stutter, absolutely terrible, my lord. Could barely put two words together at a time. Hardly a problem now, I see, the Baron managed to put in dryly, and Nigel smiled, taking the point. He bowed to the Baron. Exactly, my lord. Well, we'll soon help young George overcome his shyness. Nothing like the rough and tumble of scribe school for that. Absolutely. Absolutely, the Baron smiled in spite of himself. The scribe school was a studious place where voices were rarely, if ever, raised, and where logical, reasoned debate reigned supreme. I was thinking about supreme pizza. Anyway, personally, on his visits to the place, he had found it mind-numbing in the in the ex in the extreme. Anything less like a rough and tumble atmosphere he could not imagine. I'll take your word for it, he replied. Then to George he said, very well, George, report request granted. Report to scribe school tomorrow. George shuffled his feet awkwardly. Mumble, he said, and the Baron leaned forward again, frowning as he tried to make out the low-pitched words. What was that? He asked. George finally looked up and managed to whisper, thank you, my lord. He hurriedly shuffled back to the relative anonymity of the line. Oh, said the Baron, a little taken back. Think nothing of it. Now, next is... Jenny was already stepping forward. Baron arrowed... blonde and pretty. Blonde and pretty. She was also... It had to be admitted, a little on the chubby side, but the look suited her, and at any of the castle's social functions, she was a much sought-after dance partner with the boys in the castle, both her year-mates in the ward and the sons of castle staff as well. Master Chubb, sir, she said now, stepping forward right to the edge of the Baron's desk. The Baron looked into the round face, saw the eagerness shining there in the blue eyes, and couldn't help smiling at her. What about him? He asked gently, and she hesitated, realizing that in her enthusiasm she had breached the protocol of the choosing. Oh, your pardon, sir, my Baron, your lordship, she hastily improvised. Her tongue running away with her as she mangled the correct form of address. My lord, Martin prompted her. Baron Arid looked at him, eyebrows raised. Yes, Martin, he said. What is it? Martin had the grace to look embarrassed. He knew that his master was intentionally misunderstanding his interruption. He took a deep breath and said in an apologetic tone, I simply wanted to inform you that the candidate's name is Jenny Is Jennifer Dalby? Dalby, sir. The Baron nodded at him, and Martin, a devoted servant of the heavy bearded man, saw the look of approval in his lord's eyes. Thank you, Martin. Now, Jennifer Dalby. Jennifer, sir, said the irrepressible girl, and he shrugged resignedly. Jenny, then, I assume that you are applying to be an apprentice to Master Chubb. Oh, yes, please, sir, Jenny replied breathlessly, turning adoring eyes on the portly, red-haired cook. Chubb scowled thoughtfully and considered her. Could be, he muttered, walking back and forth in front of her. She smiled winningly at him, but Chubb was beyond such feminine willies. I'd work hard, sir, she told him earnestly. I know you would, he replied with some spirit. I'll make sure of it, girl. No slacking or lollygagging in my kitchen, let me tell you. Fearing that her opportunity might be slipping away, Jenny played her trump card. I have the right shape for it, she said. Chubb had to agree that she was well-rounded. Harold, not for the first time that morning, hid a smile. She had a point there, Chubb, he put in, and the cook turned to him in agreement. Shape is important, sir. All great cooks tend to be rounded. He turned back to the girl, still considering. It was all very well for the others to accept their trainees in the wink of an eye. He thought, but cooking was something special. Tell me, he said to the eager girl, what would you do with a turkey pie? Ooh, turkey pie, yummy. Although, to be fair, I've never had a turkey pie. I've had shepherd pie, like apple pie. What other pies have you had? Okay, next. James smiled dazzlingly at him. Eat it, she answered immediately. Chubb rapped her on the head with the ladle he carried. I meant, what would you do about cooking it? He asked. Jenny hesitated, gathered her thoughts, then plunged into a lengthy technical description of how she would go about constructing such a masterpiece. The other four wards, the Baron, his craft masters, and Martin, listened in some awe, with absolutely no comprehension of what she was saying. Chubb, however, nodded several times as she spoke, interrupting as she detailed the rolling of the pastry. 9 times, you say, he said curiously, and Jenny nodded, sure of her ground. My mother always said 8 times to make it flaky and once more for love, she said. Chubb nodded thoughtfully. Interesting, he said. Then looking up at the Baron, he nodded. I'll take her, my lord. What a surprise, the Baron said mildly, then added, very well, report to the kitchens in the morning, Jennifer. Jenny, sir, the girl corrected him again. Her smile lightened up the room. Baron Harold smiled. He glanced at the small group before him, and that leaves us with one more candidate. He glanced at his list, then looked up to meet Will's agonized gaze, gesturing encouragement. Will stepped forward, nervousness suddenly drying his throat. so that his voice came out in barely a whisper. Will, sir, my name is Will. Okay, that is the end of chapter 3. It was only 15 minutes. Oh, look at that. Continue to watch my videos to see the next part. Yes, thank you.